I want to wish you all a very happy Friday. It is August 16th. The year is 2013. It's going by pretty fast, wouldn't you say? Listen, we're going to get right to the show today. I'm not going to have any Truth Tonight announcements today, simply because we do have a host of individuals that will be, it's a panel, and we're going to be discussing the dangers of fracking and the conspiracy behind it. And a lot of you have been asking me throughout the week, what is fracking? So this is the show to learn about fracking, what it is, and you're going to get the big picture on this. In the United States especially. Now, if you want to look at some of the links that have been provided, you can go ahead and go to thetruthdenide.com. Right on the front page, you'll see some links. You can take a look at it. We will also periodically be dropping some of those links into the chat room. Hello, chat room. It's always a pleasure to see all of you in there. If you have any questions during the show, please, by all means, type them in. Our producer, Thomas, will pick up those questions and we'll throw them at the panel to see if it's anything that we haven't covered. Give the panel about the first hour, would you, chat room, just to cover a lot of the bases, because you may have some questions that they're going to cover anyway. And let's just make that first hour go by. And then if you've got questions, go ahead and field them into the chat room. Those of you who are listening on iPods and iPhones, if you are not in the chat room, just go to freedomslips.com. And right there above, you'll see chat. Just click it and join the chat room if you like. Or you can call in the show during the second hour, and I will reveal the phone number at that point. We should get started. We've got a lot of introducing to do, and we're going to educate you right away about fracking, what it is, what it means to this country, and these are the experts, and these are the individuals who are trying to do something about this. They will explain to you what has happened during the course of planning this show, because we did have a couple of gentlemen who were supposed to appear on the show, both from Green Hunter Water Solutions, and the reps backed out at the last minute. Gee, I wonder why, and we'll find out why. First, I would like to let you know all of the names of the panel. We're going to have a gentleman by the name of Mark Eddy, who is an activist and who is also very in the know about fracking. We're also going to have Doug Fields, another expert, Robin Mahonen, and Erin Bowers. We're going to start the show right now and introduce Mark Eddy to all of you. Mark, please join us on the air. And Mark, why don't you just start out with what is fracking and what made you become an activist against fracking?
Okay, fracking is a way to extract gas from like 6,000 feet below the surface, and chemicals and water used to crack the shale, and the gas will flow back out. That's basically what fracking is in a nutshell. I became more concerned about what was going on April 15th, when a frack water pipe that connects a frack pond to a fracking pad ruptured, and I saw all the water rushing down my street and into the stream that runs through my property. Fortunately, there were not the chemicals added to the water yet, and my property is okay. But that's a major reason why I am opposed to fracking. It's so prevalent within a couple miles of my neighborhood that when I moved here 9 years ago, it has changed from a rural setting to an industrialized setting, and I'm concerned that this isn't what I moved here for.
Correct. Now, where are you? What state are you in where this is occurring? And by the way, did this pipe burst in April 15th of 2013? So is this recent?
Yes. It was April 15th of this year. I live in Wheeling, West Virginia, and there are 5 well pads surrounding my house. So that's another. Aside from the frack water pipe, only 200 yards from my house, I'm also surrounded by 5 fracking wells. Okay,
and from what I understand, for instance, I'm looking at a fracking site right now, and it says 72 trillion gallons of water are being used, and 360 billion gallons of chemicals are needed to run their gas wells. So it sounds like a tremendous amount of waste of water. It sounds like a lot of chemical exposure as well that is needed. And we are speaking about natural gas, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, the extraction of natural gas. So this is the math here. I'm looking at 500,000 active gas wells in the USA times 8 million gallons of water per fracking times 18 times a well can be fracked equals 72 trillion gallons of water and 360 billion gallons of chemicals needed to run current gas wells in the United States of America. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, it takes about 2 million gallons of water to do a frack.
Can we get that phone to go off? Thank you. Can we get that phone to go off, please?
It's off.
Okay, thank you.
So there's each well can be fracked.
Okay, can we get that person that's on the phone to go in another room, please?
He's going to be off in a second. So,
Mark?
Yeah.
I need that person to go in another room, please.
It's on the answering machine. I'm sorry. So there's 2 million gallons of water that needs to be used to do one frack. Each well can be fracked 3 times, and there's up to 6 wells or 10 wells per pad. So that's just a tremendous amount of water for just one well.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. Well, and again, the contamination, it says during the process, methane gas and toxic chemicals leach out from the system and contaminate nearby groundwater. Then methane concentrations are 17 times higher in drinking water wells near fracturing sites than in normal wells. So this sounds pretty bad. I mean, it sounds pretty massive, the contamination that's going on. And then when it comes to the drinking water, the contaminated well water is used for drinking water for nearby cities and towns. There have been over 1,000 documented cases of water contamination next to the areas of gas drilling, as well as cases of sensory, respiratory, and neurological damage due to ingested contaminated water. So this is just bad news all the way around the block, right, Mark?
Yes, and there's also the flaring.
What does that mean?
That's where they burn off some of the excess gases, and a lot of the heavier gases are in that the ground ozone. It's like a mist or fog that would hover around. Yeah. So I've smelled that from the 5 well pads near my house.
So hold on a second. So you're actually smelling something, and gas doesn't have a smell. So what are you smelling?
Oh, it's the flare. It happens during the flares.
Okay.
Well, it's like so it'd be like methane. It's
Halloween.
Okay. Mark, could I ask that the people that are in the room, I really appreciate all of you being here for this show, but I must ask that anyone that's in the room, if they need to speak to one another, they need to go into another room or stand outside or do something like that, because I know the importance of this subject matter, and I know how all of you, I know your background, and I know what you are doing in the world to change this, and I'd like this to be a show where our audience can really hear what each one of you have to say individually. So I'm going to have to ask again that anybody talking, answering phones, and all the rest of it, please, if you go into another room and have your discussion, it'll really make for a more precise show that the audience can really hear. Now, what about this stuff that they call that's left behind? Only 30 to 50% of the fracturing fluid is recovered, and the rest of the toxic fluid is left in the ground and is not biodegradable. So is that the stuff that's escaping up into the air, Mark, or is this a whole different toxic situation as well that's being left in the ground?
Well, the flaring is just going up into the atmosphere as well as along ground level. The flow back is probably what you're talking about. That's
okay.
That's the solution that was injected into the ground to do the fracking. That it has to come back out to allow the gas and oil to come out behind it, and that solution that was put into the ground to do the fracturing is what the Green Hunter plant is going to be doing in the Warwood section of Wheeling, is treating it so that it could be reused at other well pads, and the parts that so it cuts down on using fresh water, but they also have to get rid of the solids in the flow back, and that's what part of Green Hunter's plan is to possibly barge it on the Ohio River to injection well sites.
Okay. So and that sounds a little scary because you're talking about a river, and I'm sorry, I need to correct myself. What you were first talking about is the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. That's what in the open air pits that evaporates the VOCs into the atmosphere, creating contaminated air, acid rain, and ground level ozone. So may I ask this question? Has fracking been going on for a long time, or are they going gangbusters on it right now? In my opinion, I think the way fracking is being done now is a relatively new procedure. Those wells you see out in the cornfields in like Ohio. Okay.
They've been bringing oil up for 60, 70 years, but you also don't see hundreds of trucks dumping all these toxic solutions to help those smaller drills to go down to the gas. So what's going on just in my neighborhood is new technology.
I see what you're saying. That's what I was going to ask you, because this is hydraulic fracking, and it sounds like you just nailed it, that they're doing something new. There's a new technology, and I would imagine this new technology is basically to extract more barrels of natural gas a day, get it out of the ground faster. That's what I'm imagining is going on, because otherwise I don't think they would try to increase it. At this point, we have 300,000 barrels of natural gas a day being extracted in the USA. So I'm thinking that number has gone way up. Am I right?
It sounds sounds like what you're saying is credible. I'd say so.
Okay. So the technology, as you said, has changed, and it's also sounds now. Answer this for me on a logical note, Mark. Why is it that the price of natural gas is so cheap, for instance, compared to electricity? Why is it so cheap then? It sounds like it's cost a lot of money to get this stuff out, and certainly numerous environmental hazards at the same token. So why is natural gas so cheap to the end user?
Oh, there's a huge supply in northern West Virginia, eastern Ohio. So it's just supply and demand. And
I see.
They can slow down drilling to raise the prices if they want, and it's you see that all the time in when we look at car fuel too. Any turbulation going on in the Middle East causes our gas prices to go up. So it's it's a little safer here, but there's a large supply. But you can also manipulate how many barrels you're producing too.
Now, sure. And as you described, this area that you personally live in is turning into a real industrial area pretty quickly. What about the neighbors and people who live in your area? Are they aware of what's happening? Are they aware that how dangerous fracking is? And I definitely, we're going to take a break in a few minutes, but when we get back from the break, I want to talk about the idea of collapsing. Can you extract so much of this natural gas that you can actually collapse or get a sinkhole, or after that shale rock has been cracked and fractured? Are we also looking at catastrophic events that may occur in the near future because of these natural gas extractions?
I don't know if there's sinkholes in our area, but it does appear that in the Youngstown, Ohio area there have been earthquakes related to the fracking going on there. You can just look at newspaper articles from the Youngstown area about December 31st of last year. There seemed to be some earthquakes related to, suddenly appeared after fracking started. So, I don't think we've had any sinkholes in this area yet. Was handed a report that there's seems to have been a 2.6 earthquake in Ohio today.
Okay, and I guess that's not normal?
I don't think you really, Ohio's really not noted for earthquakes.
Right. I gotcha.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a. We could check more on a U.S. Geological Survey
Sure.
map or something, but it could be caused by fracking. There also seems to have been some other reports that are, I think it was a college professor at Ohio State that linked fracking to earthquakes.
Gotcha. Well, and I have read some reports about the concerns with sinkholes at this point. There's a rather large problem with a sinkhole out in New Orleans. We have somebody that reports from there. And then, of course, as you can see in Florida, their buildings and houses are just sinking into the ground. We're not quite sure, the correlation. So I just thought I'd ask, because it seems obvious if you're extracting something from the earth that's between a lot of rock, and you're extracting something that the earth may need, and obviously at a faster rate than ever, that could be it. So maybe that's something for a future topic, for sure. Now, when we do get back from the break, I would like to bring Doug Shields, to explain both sides of the gas oil industry in which he has worked in, and what's going on at the city council level for Pittsburgh. Definitely very curious about all of that. And, of course, I would like to reiterate for everybody that's listening right now, we had planned for 2 reps from both Greenwater Solutions. Both of the reps from Greenwater Solutions actually backed out of the show. And we had told them in advance, as Mark Eddy, who put up this show together this evening, who is the voice you've been listening to, we had told them that we were not going to, demonize them. We were simply going to ask them questions and get their side of the story. I think it's always good to get their side of the story. Being that Robin, who will be on the show later, and Erin Bowers, they're going to fill us in as well on the other side of the story, as far as what these companies are doing or what they think they're doing. And Mr. Jack, I guess, said that he will not discuss this publicly other than at a Wheelings City Council Planning Commission level. So that says a lot right there in the protection of the government confines, as opposed to some of us who might have some of these questions and draw out some of the information that we did at the very front of this show. So I think, Mark, you did a fantastic job of at least trying to get these individuals on the show, and I'm sorry that they canceled out, but I think that speaks volumes.
Well, thank you, Roxy, for the opportunity. I thought it was really a way to present this in a fair and balanced manner, and they might be listening right now. But we could always try to assemble another panel and try to get them on again if you'd like.
I am always open to speaking to them at Greenwater, Green Hunter Water Solutions, and if they want to come on the show by themselves, we can do a show with just those 2 reps. And so I'm always open to the discussion. Listen, we've got to take a quick break, and when we get back, let's get Doug Shields on the line, and let's see what he has to say. You're listening to The Truth Denied Talk Radio. I'm Roxy Lopez, and our guests this evening are Mark Eddy, Doug Shields, Robin Mahonen, and Erin Bowers. We're talking about fracking. Very important show, people. We'll be right back.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. If you plan to call in and speak with one of our hosts, please turn down your radio and separate yourself from any background noise and wait for the area code to be called on before you speak. And don't forget, Revolution Radio freedomslips.com is listener supported. So stop by the homepage, freedomslips.com, visit the site support area to help support the host you're listening to's airtime. Thank you. Revolution Radio freedomslips.com, where the truth never sleeps.
Hi, I'm Jason Brentwood with Crush the News, and you're listening to Revolution Radio. And now back to The Truth Denied with Roxy Lopez.
And welcome back. Again, all we're trying to do here is educate the public on fracking. So many people have asked the question, what is it? They don't even know what fracking means. And I'd like to speak with Doug Shields about this a little bit. Doug, can you explain both sides of the gas and oil industry in which you have personally worked in?
Sure, and thank you for having me on, Roxy. And Mark, hello. I saw Mark about a month ago in Wheeling at a forum there. Just a little by way of background, one, I was more recently a Pittsburgh City Councilman for 20 years. Prior to that, I was a litigation paralegal, and I specialized in environmental law, and it was all corporate clients, and certainly did a lot of regulatory work for a oil and gas company that was headquartered here in western Pennsylvania, it was a big one, but they were bought out and gone for a number of years now. But we did regulatory work for them in the gas fields in the Allegheny National Forest in northwest Pennsylvania. I also did a lot of work on city council in 1996 in developing a tariff that will allow retail choice as to buying your energy. You see a lot of that now. Instead of going through regulated utilities, consumers now can go to the marketplace and purchase gas in what was hoped to be a competitive marketplace. For instance, if you want to buy wind energy instead of a coal-derived, you can do that as well. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names on the air, but anyway. And actually, before that, way long time ago, back in 1974, I was a helmsman on an oil field boat in the Gulf of Mexico, not far from Grand Island, just offshore where the rig blew up with BP not too many years ago. So I've been around the industry quite a bit. Certainly from the workaday world in the oil fields in the Gulf of Mexico to regulatory work in major law firms with oil and gas industry, and then in government working with the gas industry and electric utilities in the unbundling of consumer choice. In fact, I was considered a darling of the industry in 1996. They asked me to speak at the Pennsylvania Oil and Gas Association about the consumer choice program at that time. But in 2000 and late 08 and then through 2009 in Pittsburgh, when I was the president of City Council, I started to get phone calls from constituents in residential areas and urban area where people were being solicited to sign leases. And that didn't make any sense at all to me. I know the industry well enough, and why would you want to lease out a parcel that is maybe, 2,000, 3,000 square feet? Doesn't make sense. And they were doing that. And I got phone calls, and I started scratching my head, and I knew I had a new problem in the office. Fast forward, after doing our due diligence and learning about fracking in Pennsylvania at that time, we started to hear tales of woe from places like Dimmock, PA, where a well casing went bad, and Washington County residents. And, they were making noise there, but nobody was hearing it. We also started, and I certainly started to try to understand the process. This was unlike anything that I had been familiar with. And as a result of the council's due diligence and mine, we introduced, along with the Community and Environmental Legal Defense Fund, better known as CELDF, with Ben Price, a model ordinance that essentially asserted the rights of the people of Pittsburgh. It's called a community rights ordinance, and also conferred rights to nature itself here, and effectively banned shale gas drilling. That bill was on the table for 3 months. There were a number of post-agenda sessions, 2 special sessions of council with a full table full of experts for the council to question and understand, both industry-related and public health officials, constitutional law scholars, you name it. And at the end of the day, after 3 months of debate and deliberation, the bill was passed as is, no amendments, in a 9-0 vote. And to the best of my knowledge, it was the first place anywhere, certainly in the United States, if not the world, where hydraulic extraction of shale gas was outright banned. We were threatened with lawsuits. We were told that we can't do this. And to date, here we are coming in November 16th, will be the 3rd anniversary, and nobody has so much as put a precipice or anything else in court to challenge Pittsburgh. And of course, subsequent to all that, other municipalities in and around Pittsburgh banned it. And State College, Pennsylvania, on a referendum 2 years ago, amended the very same bill to their home rule charter. It passed by over 70%. In the last election cycle, Ohio towns of Broadview Heights, Ohio, which is a suburban community with drilling operations and residential subdivisions, did the same thing. So did Mansfield, Ohio. So did Longmont, Colorado. And as a matter of a couple of weeks ago, Marbledale, New York, and up in the Upper Hudson area, north of New York City, did it as well, and a number of other places, Las Vegas, New Mexico, and so forth. It's been an incredible journey, and a lot of people are, why did you do this? And so we're here to talk a little bit about that tonight.
Yes, and these states and counties that you just mentioned, to be clear, those are all now have successfully banned shale drilling. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
good.
Correct.
I love it.
It was interesting. It was a dilemma. In 2003, the United States Geological Survey announced that there is a shale bed full of, well, they didn't say shale, they said there is about 100 trillion cubic feet of gas beneath Pennsylvania, lower New York, eastern Ohio, West Virginia, and western Maryland. And of course, when I read that news headline, I was like, great, good. I go, well, I guess, it's gas. And of course, western Pennsylvania is the birthplace of the oil and gas industry. The first wells were drilled here, both for commercial gas, natural gas well, methane wells, and oil at Drake's Well in Oil City. So western Pennsylvania has a long history of this industry being here, and shallow gas drilling into sandstone was never really seen as a big deal. And as such, that's what our point of reference was when it was announced that, 100 trillion cubic feet of gas lay under 64 million square miles, or 64 million acres, I should say, in this region. And 03 comes along, then 05 comes along. And it was interesting, in the 2005 Energy Act, if you want to go read it, it's about 1,700 pages. I've gone through it. I haven't read every page, but certainly started to dive into it when I got caught up in this. There was the now famous Halliburton loophole. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody in Congress or anywhere else understood what it was. And slipping a 30, 40, 50-word amendment into a 1,700 bill is no big deal. Those folks aren't even going to look at it. But the fact of the matter is that it benefited in the tune of billions about 7 or 8 corporations. And it exempted them, people that were going to begin to do injection well drilling, were exempted from the Clean Water Act and other environmental acts that United States Steel and Alcoa and everybody else have to abide by. And the interesting point about all that is that the oil and gas industry knew exactly what was going on. I mean, they got office buildings full of lawyers and workers and whatever, and they get up and worry about this business every day. So Dick Cheney, of course, being the vice president and also the former head of Halliburton, one of the largest oil field supply companies in the world, got that in. Nobody understood it. And then so 04 and 05 come along, 06 comes along, and the first Marcellus well was drilled by Range Resources about 40, 50 miles south of Pittsburgh in Washington County. And again, took little notice. And at this point, the public and most elected people and saw this as just a continuation of shallow gas drilling. And then 7 and 8 and 9 come along, and through 08 and 09, there was what we call the lease rush was on. All of a sudden, our area and all through Pennsylvania, we were blanketed with what they call landsmen who are acquiring mineral right leasing from property owners, and or they could work independently or for a corporation that is doing the drilling. And man, they would have leased a mailbox at that point in time, it seemed. And that's when things started to come to the fore in Pittsburgh. When city residents on densely populated streets and sections of the city in Morningside, Lawrenceville, and Lincoln Place in my council district began to have people knocking at their doors with a contract and a check for $1,200 to sign it. And as I said, none of this made any sense at all from a business standpoint, because, my God, what are you going to get from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot lot? Like $18 a year royalty? It didn't make any sense at all. What we later discovered is that, and I was told this by representatives of 2 oil and gas companies, Range Resources, who met with me at my office, and Huntley & Huntley, a Pennsylvania corporation, been around a long time. And both of them said, and when I asked them about that question, I said, why? And they said, look, no one's going to drill there. Okay, then why are you doing it? Because it improves share price. In other words, when you go to buy stock, you have to, your offer is made through what they call a prospectus. And it's a highly regulated document regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And, you can't engage in puffery or car salesmanship type of tactics. But you can also state that I have 100,000 acres of leased land in Pennsylvania, or 500,000, or 1 million. The higher the acreage goes, the better the stock position was, and increasing share price for the shareholders. And of course, more often than not in corporations, a fair number of the corporate officers, all of them actually, have a fair number of shares that they hold. So they were enriching themselves by manipulating market. The leases themselves, whether they are ever utilized as a real field for drilling, are certainly now financial instruments that can be traded, discounted, held on your books as a asset, all sorts of things.
How long were the leases for? Do you know?
Most of the leases that I've encountered, including the one that our county...
Were they 99-year leases?
No, they're in perpetuity.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and, here's the sad part. I just kind of gave you a little chronology, but we as local officials, we have our hands full. We were dealing with a financial mess in Pittsburgh, which is much better these days. I'm happy to report. But these are state-regulated matters and state business. Now, you wake up one day and you read in the headlines that there's 100 trillion cubic feet of gas. And by the way, those estimates have gone up as high as 300 trillion cubic feet of gas in the Marcellus. And it's being advertised as the second largest gas play in the world. And nobody, when you think back now, hindsight being 2020, that nobody in our institutions of government or leadership in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania said, how is that going to change the character of this state? What impacts should we be expecting and planning for? And the sad thing was, nobody did anything. Not a thing. No environmental impact studies, not only the natural environment, but the as-built environment, your infrastructure, roads, water, those types of assets that we utilize for everything. No look at a review of the process, its problems, and what health risks might be exposing populations to. As Mark pointed out, he smelled something earlier in the show. You said, well, it doesn't have an odor. What Mark was smelling were hydrocarbons and volatile organic compounds coming off of that well, or when they're flaring, or when they're operating, or when they're running compressor stations or cryogenic plants to separate a wet gas, which would be propane, ethane, and butane, stuff in your cigarette lighter, which is called wet gas, and separating that from the methane. They take what comes out of that well, and they'll strip it and take the component gases out. And the methane, of course, goes into your local gas utility, and that's what you light your stove with. Well, that's what Mark was smelling. Volatile organic compounds are endocrine disruptors. If any of your listeners want to know about that, check out Thea Coburn's website. She's a world-renowned endocrinologist, and that has a direct impact on child development. It also has a impact upon women's reproductive capabilities and men's reproductive capabilities as well. These are toxic poisons, and nobody did their due diligence. You had plenty of notice, certainly by 2003. Nobody came out. Nobody stopped and thought. However, the oil and gas industry knew, again, exactly what they had and knew exactly what we're going to do in Pennsylvania, and essentially bought off the Pennsylvania state legislature. And to date, I think they've spent over $28 million in lobbying campaign contributions over the past 6 years. And for a politician, I get it, being one myself. What could be so bad? It's jobs, it's money, and it's campaign contributions, the triple play. And here we are in a Rust Belt state. And this is the first thing that's come along since, the steel mills, which disappeared in the 70s and 80s. What could go wrong? This is a good thing. And, nobody decided to pick up a paper or talk to other people or third parties to educate themselves as to what this is. And so by the time things started to really roll in Pennsylvania, those politicians that may have seen it that way before would find it terribly difficult to reverse course and reverse themselves. And somebody will run a flip-flop ad, I guess, on them or something silly like that. And also there's a good many, particularly in the Republican side, where much of the campaign contributions went, were just cheerleading along the side and promoting ALEC-based bills and where we were at. To point this out, Roxy, the Oil and Gas Act of Pennsylvania was last touched up in 1985. It had nothing envisioned within that act about the extraction of shale gas by means of hydraulic extraction or fracking. And so here we are now, and it's been a bloody fight in Pennsylvania. A lot of people have been hurt. There is a list of the harmed on the internet if anybody wants to go to just type in list of the harmed. And there are literally over, I think, about almost 1,000, if not more, that are documented cases of people that have had adverse health impacts. So here we are. This is where we're at in Pennsylvania, and this is where Mark is in West Virginia.
This is terrible. Doug, is this another clear example as well of lobbyists? And because you made mention to maybe some of the representatives in government aren't really well, no case studies were done.
Right.
I mean, obviously no information was supplied to them. So they kind of, like you said, they had a good attitude towards it, creating jobs and wealth, etc. But is this another example of lobbyists? And then anyone who did want perhaps any scientific explanation of hydraulic fracking, let's say, they present, one side of the science, in other words.
Sure.
And so these guys are kind of completely uneducated.
Right. I don't really hold the industry or any advocacy group to the standard that I would hold an elected official to.
Right.
Of course, the industry is going to come in and tell you it's all good. They're not going to tell you it's bad. And the guy that's selling you shoes are going to tell you they're the best shoes you can buy, too. So that kind of comes with the territory. Our institutions of government, the bureaucracies like Pennsylvania DEP or the federal EPA, our elected leadership look the other way, either by design or by laziness and sloth, just look the other way. And that's where I center the obligation. I mean, obviously, just like the folks that are in Wheeling that want to do this wastewater, I shouldn't even call it water because it's not even close to water, the returned fluids from the well, have a number of issues in front of them, not the least of which is radioactivity in the material coming back. I don't understand, why they wouldn't come forward to have this discussion tonight. I always say, our problem in this country seems to me, we go to an argument before we do anything else. And I think it's incumbent upon us as citizens to demand a discussion, a cogent exchange of information between the proponents and the industry, with the proviso that, yes, they will benefit. So you got to look at that, with a caveat emptor, buyer beware. But on the other side of the coin, when you've got the wholesale sign-up of state representatives and whatnot, kind of just drinking the Kool-Aid and going along with the program and taking the money and the trip to the Super Bowl or whatever else they got, that I find repugnant. I find it to be just, un-American and certainly a fraud upon the people of this country. And that's, I tell people this, look, I said, when you talk to your state rep, be nice, be polite, whatever, and get to the point of what you want to talk to them about. You don't need to go beat them over the head on the first meeting. Maybe the fifth one you might, want to be a little more adversarial. But they, our representatives, I remind them, are not our rulers. They are, in fact, our representatives, not the industry representatives. And you have to hold them to that standard, and you got to put their feet to the fire. If they're not serving you, then why are they in office? If they can't sit down with a community at a table and say, here's why I'm in favor of it, and then to hear the other side about, well, here's some of the adverse impacts that are well documented, what are you going to do about that? They have to respond to that. In case after case after case, they have not. And the industry itself is very shy about being on a program where there are knowledgeable people who can tell the other side of the story. They love a controlled audience and a controlled format. They're not much on a cogent debate. And it's not even a debate. I would call it an exchange of fact, and go from there.
Sure, and I get it. I mean, at this point, they probably figured that perhaps you all knew what you were talking about, as you said, educated, and how are they going to run from that on a live program? At the other end of that spectrum, I really appreciate that Mark wanted, them to have a voice in this, and I can certainly appreciate it. What is this about gag orders that Pennsylvania physicians have gag orders not to tell patients what caused their illnesses?
That's correct. In 2012, the Commonwealth and the Republican caucus, they control both houses in Pennsylvania, the Senate and the Assembly and the House of Reps, began to push what we now call Act 13. And Tom Ridge, our governor, who is now on the governor endangered species list for a host of reasons, but he demanded, no taxes, no new taxes. And even in the Republican Senate, they knew that they weren't going to get away with that. So they called it an impact fee. And the bill was largely about impact fees. And it's about, 70, 80 pages. And most of it, 70% of it, details how the fee is to be levied against the industry and how it's calculated and then distributed. Chapter 33 of Act 13 in Pennsylvania of 2012 has a number of things in it that are just beyond the pale, the least of which is the gag order section in the Act. And if a physician is treating someone for some ailment, let's say you're out in shalefield country and you're like Mark or somebody and you start breathing this stuff and you start getting rashes and all sorts of things that we have seen. And you go to your physician, and they're going to look at what's going on. They're going to ask you about, what's your environment like, that sort of thing. And let's say you tell them, well, I have like 5 gas wells around my house, a compressor station down the road, and a frack pit, open frack pit with contaminated liquids in it, breathing USCs. Now, the doctor can go back to the industry to find out what chemicals they're utilizing. But in Act 13, and then that was the other thing about transparency about what it is, the industry has tried to hide that for years and claim it was proprietary. But within Act 13, although the politicians will tell you that, we have all this transparency now, the fact of the matter is that all they have to do is write a letter, essentially, and say this particular formula is proprietary and non-disclose it.
And welcome back to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio, and thanks again for joining us. We're at the top of the second hour and having a very lengthy discussion about fracking, hydraulic fracking in particular. And I was just speaking with Doug Shields. We were going over discussing the health effects associated with hydraulic fracking. And apparently physicians have been gag ordered. In other words, they can't share with their own patients the cause of their illnesses. And I am looking at the list of harmed website at the moment. And, of course, we put that into the chat room. So go ahead and look at that. Very interesting, the list of harmed. And I'm looking at Pam, Judy, and Family. If you're on this site with me, it's the first one. Interesting. It's Carmichael's, Pennsylvania gas facility. The compressor station is 780 feet away from where they live. Exposure, air, symptoms, headaches, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, nosebleed. Blood tests show exposure to benzene and other chemicals. And if you want to read the rest of the story, there's a link to each one of the harmed. I'm particularly interested in the second one, Daryl Smitsky. Location, Hickory, Pennsylvania. Gas facility range resources well, less than 1,000 feet away. The exposure is water, toluene, acrylonitrile, sorry, I can't pronounce that one, but interesting. Strontium, barium, manganese. Symptoms, rashes on the legs from showering. Symptoms, animal, 5 healthy goats dead. Fish in pond showing abnormal scales. And another neighbor comments anonymously, and you can take a look at that link. And these names go on and on. I find it very interesting, Doug, that strontium, barium, and manganese in the water, because these are the same toxic chemicals that we're finding supposedly in chemtrails. Not that I want to go sideways here and go into chemtrails, but I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, well, I think this is going back to the issue of a very interesting time in our country, and it's happened in the past, and that is who's running this place. I taught a class a master's class at Duquesne University in political leadership, and the first class was structure of government, and at the top of every organizational chart is not the governor, not the president, not the mayor, it's the electorate. But right now we're in a very interesting time of conflict between corporate domination of a democracy. And people's voices seem to be taking a back seat. We, the people, seem to be not being taken into account for corporate agendas, whether it be chemtrails or GMOs and God knows what else. They make money, we get sick. I don't think that's a good proposition, and I think that the American people are going to have to take up the challenge of being a citizen in this country. It is, being in a democracy is very rigorous on its electorate, and that means that we got to go find out ourselves. And certainly there's far and away more information about this now than there was in 2007, 8, 9. For people, Pennsylvania was a huge guinea pig and continues to be so. And just a bit about the gag order on physicians even. Even the Pennsylvania Medical Society said that the intent was not to gag doctors, but the law is so vague, it lacks boundaries, and it makes doctors nervous. And certainly with their liabilities and costs of their malpractice insurance, I'm sure they're going to take the conservative approach. The other thing that troubles me greatly is beyond physicians for responsibility, some other medical healthcare types. The medical community itself as a whole, the AMA or doctors that treat us and whatnot, seem to be extremely shy about discussing this matter. I tried in my work in council and later tried to contact the head of the Pennsylvania State Medical Society, a woman who happened to be an endocrinologist as well. They refused to speak to me just on a phone call. Let's chat about this, get a cup of coffee. Let's, what do we have here? It's amazing the amount of silence that comes from institutions, particularly in the medical community. I mean, Congress has got a 6 or 8% approval rating. Conversely, probably the most trusted people in this country are medical practitioners. And I think they have an obligation to come forward to discuss these things. One last bit about this is in March of 2010, I heard about a young mayor, Calvin Tillman, from a place called Dish, Texas, was coming to Pittsburgh. And I certainly was starting to grapple with the issue. And I told my staff to get in touch and tell him I want to meet him when he gets here. And we did. He showed me a blood test that he had several years back. And his blood was fine. Then he showed me one that was only several months old. He had arsenic in his blood and a number of other things that should not be there. And he had built a huge compressor station in his town that he was the mayor of. It's about 60 miles northwest of Fort Worth. Calvin has since left town. He moved away from the town that he was mayor of to get his family away from what they were suffering from. And it's a very sad thing. And this is what's happening to Americans across the country by way of the list of the harm. We have a community. The towns you mentioned are all within probably 50, 60 miles of Pittsburgh, as is Wheeling. But nobody seems to care. We have a community just north of Pittsburgh in the neighboring Butler County. It's called the Woodlands, and it's a relatively, I would say, lower middle income, maybe low income, rural population out in the hinterlands of rural Pennsylvania. And it initially started off with 12 families lost their water. Now it's up to probably over 50.
What do you mean lost their water?
They are all on well water, and their well water is all contaminated and can't be used. Now, when a hurricane struck New Orleans, Katrina, every American reached in their pocket and put some money up. If they couldn't do that, they prayed, they did whatever they could to make things better. That's what we Americans do. The barn burns down, we all come over and help rebuild. And we threw billions collectively as a country at the stricken city of New Orleans. Yet here we are and now it's the burden of proof falls to the resident to prove that the industry poisoned their well. That's the way our judicial system works. You're the plaintiff, the burden of proof is on you. And the industry has fought them tooth and nail. My commentary to elected officials in particular is that who cares why the water's contaminated at this point? When New Orleans was hurt, we sent supplies, food, building materials, volunteers, you name it there. And these people are ignored. And you've done nothing to help them. There's photos of this place. There's a woman that is an older woman, probably over 60, standing between two sheets in a car, and her husband's trying to give her a bath, a shower with this rig that they put together. That's what they're living with today and what they have been living with for over 2 years in the Woodlands in Pennsylvania. And that story is fairly well documented on the net, both in mainline and not so mainline news outlets. And I'm like, how do we do this to people? If this was a fire, we'd be there. The Red Cross would be there. But because this is attached to drilling, they are left to hang. And, that strikes a big chord with me. I don't know how other people feel about being an American, but I think that's an obligation we have to one another. This is a compact between people to have a government that works for us, by us, of us. And, that seems to have been thrown out right out the window. And I find it extremely offensive.
I think that we're being bullied. I think the citizens are being bullied by the corporations. I think the government is being bullied by the corporations. And I think our voice, as far as hope goes, and I really truly mean this, everyone that a majority of the people that I speak with, Doug, they've given up hope. They've written the letters. They've showed up. They've given all the evidence. The EPA, for instance, is not. We have to hold the EPA accountable. They're not doing their job. Other representatives, we have to hold. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, let me back that up a little bit. Mm-hmm. The EPA is a nameless, faceless agency. Mm-hmm. We have to hold President Barack Obama, someone that I supported. I was the highest-ranking elected official here in Western PA that ran as a delegate for Barack Obama in 2008. So, obviously I certainly politically supported him. What he has done on this issue has been extremely disappointing to me. It's not the EPA. It's the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, the leader of this country, Barack Obama. It's the governor of Pennsylvania, both Tom Corbett and the governor before, Ed Rendell, who is now a lobbyist for this industry, who by executive order signed a lease for 300,000 acres of drilling in parks in Pennsylvania.
Imagine that.
When you say the EPA, people, big nameless, faceless, it's big government, it's all bad, blah, blah, blah. I would rather put a face to these things and demand accountability from our fellow citizens who have offered their services to us to serve us in these offices, from the president down to the local township commissioner. That's the face of what's wrong here. The EPA in Pavilion, Wyoming, proved that these people out there were being poisoned by this industry. People like John Fenton, who's featured in Gasland 1 and Gasland 2. I hope people take the time to watch it, Josh Fox's movie.
Yes.
And then several months ago, after whatever internal pressures they were getting, pulled up stakes and said, well, we're turning it all over to the state in Wyoming, which is pro-gas and who cares. In Dimock, Pennsylvania, the EPA put out a story over a year ago and said, the water in Dimock, PA is okay now. And yet people inside the EPA spoke directly with the citizens there and said, don't drink this. It isn't okay. And then just recently, some information came out in the national news about how the EPA essentially lied about this stuff. The people that work in these agencies do a great job. And again, outside of Fort Worth, Texas, and that is illustrated again in Gasland Part 2, the movie. It's on HBO, or you can, get Gasland 1 on Netflix if you want to see what's going on. And the EPA Region 6 director over this matter, where Range Resources was clearly at fault for contamination of water supplies there. The EPA Region 6 director was fired, forced out, and the investigation was just recently dropped. The EPA will only do what the leadership of this country tells it to do, whether they be in Congress or whether they be in the White House.
All right.
So I want to give the bureaucrats a little of their due, and having worked a lot with regulatory agencies and so forth, they'll tell you in private, but they're scared to death to go on the record because they see what happens. You put your head up, bang, here it comes. And you're out of a job, you're blacklisted, or whatever the hell happens. Pardon me for swearing. But,
no, that's all right.
Yeah,
I have a question about that, though. How do you encourage citizens to take action?
And you know what citizens are, and certainly I have played a role in this thing that has garnered some notoriety and attention. Mm-hmm. But let's give the credit due where it is. I didn't get involved until citizens came to me.
Okay.
And throughout Pennsylvania, we have seen, and throughout the world now, ad hoc groups throw themselves together, get a Facebook page and start talking about this and start on organizing marches, starting to go into the Youngstown City, Ohio city government and say, what the heck is going on? You explain this to me, and demanding, not in a very shy way, some answers. And that movement is growing. Interestingly, the industry issued a white paper from, I think it's Global Solutions, last year. It was leaked out in New York. I was provided a leaked copy in November. By January, it had hit the mainstream news. Forbes magazine did it as well. The industry it was a really rare opportunity to see the thinking of the industry put in black and white. One, they're scared to death of the bans. Two, they don't really know how to handle this movement that is growing, and it is largely enabled by social media, such as your program and Facebook and everything. If something happens in Pennsylvania now, people in New Zealand know about it because they're getting fracked too in a minute. In Australia, in Romania, I'm working with groups over there. In Ireland, and now what you see going on in Balcombe, England. Again, the government, this is all money and jobs. And meanwhile, the public, the people that decide, for instance, in Balcombe right now, I mean, there's massive demonstrations there. Bulgaria signed a deal with Chevron. And tens of thousands of people throughout that country went out and marched. And guess what? They banned it. Politicians like to have ribbon cuttings and claim that they brought jobs and money to the community. And then they disappear, and we're stuck with the aftermath. But, in whether it's in places like Pittsburgh or State College or Broadview Heights, Ohio, or, other places that have taken political action, then, you can turn this around. But it was revealing in that white paper how they are trying to kind of control the message, and they're losing control. And, the think tank is a multinational, offices around the globe, that kind of thing. Very thoughtful, very well-written piece. Encourage people to look it up. It shows what the industry's dealing with. They thought they could roll this out just like they did with tobacco. That doesn't cause cancer. Asbestos, the same. And I did a lot of legal work in asbestos defense work, by the way, for the industry on their massive influx of asbestos claims. And 15, 20 years ago, you can get away with that kind of stuff. Today is extremely difficult. It's hard to put a genie back in the bottle, and it's out. And the way the citizenry can become more involved. And I don't care if you're pro or against or whatever, but you have an obligation as a citizen to educate yourself to this issue. And the more you look into it, the more people find reason for pause. And, and that's what's going on in this country today. The promise, here's the talking points in the industry. It's a bridge fuel to the future. We've heard that 1,000 times.
Right.
My response is, okay, how long is the bridge and what's at the other end of it? What is the future? Somebody explain to me what the national energy policy is. No one can. The second thing they always say, this is a game changer. I go, great. What's the game and what are the rules? And what was the game before, by the way? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
Good for you.
Energy independence. We're going to have energy independence. And I remind people constantly, one, they're playing on racist fears and anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-whatever. We've been conditioned to see everything in black and white. And, it's obvious what they're talking about, energy independence. Heretofore, before shale, natural gas, methane, oil supplies were fairly well isolated on the planet. The Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico, Malaysia, Indonesia, places like that, Finland, Russia. And these nation states are big producers. But now you can get it anywhere. And, it's like, you have to understand something. Maybe you believe not necessarily no, but maybe you believe that we are entirely too dependent upon energy sources from foreign nation states, particularly ones not friendly to this country. But what you are in fact doing is trading your dependency on foreign nation producer states to multinational corporations. And you mentioned earlier in the show, well, why is energy cheap? And the fact of the matter is, it isn't. It's going up. Even with this glut of methane on the market, which crashed the market, by the way, 2-3 years ago, 2010, 2011, natural gas was going at $2.80 a thousand cubic feet of gas. You couldn't drill successfully if the price was under about $3.84 an MCF. It cost you $26 million in capital outlays to put a well in. You're drilling well. You're bringing gas up to $2.08. You're losing money. And the fact of the matter is if you go on and just simply type in, gas prices and whatnot, I'm looking at United States Energy Information Administration, and you see consumer prices are going up. How can that be with a global glut of methane gas on the market, whether from conventional operations or unconventional gas, which is the Marcellus shale gas and other shale plays in the world? And energy independence, this stuff is all heading to facilities in the Gulf of Mexico. They're building a new one. They've been building one down in Baltimore. This is going to export markets. Japan right now is paying $10 an MCF. They need energy, and they will pay whatever they can, and they do not have many resources. Their nuclear program's a shambles. They need energy. China, they're a big consumer of energy. They need lots of it as they grow their economy. That gas is all being shipped offshore, not for domestic markets. If it all stayed here, fine. At least you can say, well, at least gas is pennies instead of dollars. But these are going to global markets. And you're shifting your dependency, as I said, say from an OPEC, which is always seems to be easily demonized. OPEC hasn't cornered the market since North Sea oil came in a decade ago or so. And you're trading your dependency upon multinational corporations that really don't give a darn about anything except making money, whether it's Exxon, BP, Chevron, and Statoil in France, you name it. I've got to know all these energy companies because guess what? They're all drilling in Pennsylvania now. And that's what's going on. So if you go check with your public utility commission in your state and see where gas prices are headed. Okay. See where utility companies are filing for rate increases right now. That's
okay, makes sense. Doug, you appeared in New Yorkers Against Fracking. The Sky is Pink. Can you tell me what that's about? And I'll definitely recommend it. And then, of course, we're going to be heading into a break in under 2 minutes. So I also want to know where people can get a hold of you.
Okay, well, first of all, you can get a hold of me on my Facebook page. That's the easiest and fastest way. The other thing about The Sky is Pink, that was a short film by Josh Fox. It was first run on Rolling Stone's website. At that time, Governor Cuomo, who's been on the fence for over 4 years now, was promoting an idea of doing fracking in 5 counties. And they were kind of tested. It was a trial balloon. It was leaked out. Josh Fox puts this quick 18-minute film together, and he does a magnificent job of explaining a very complex thing in 18 minutes. And there, what he put in, I ended up giving the title to the film by way of the interview, and I said, you sit here, and scientists come in and say the sky is blue. Then all of a sudden, someone from the industry comes in and goes, no, the sky is pink. And now you have a debate, which is exactly what the industry wants. They don't care if they win the argument per se, but as long as there's a debate flabbing about with junk science and phony baloney industry-sponsored research and whatever, then the American people are sitting there scratching their heads and confused. And the news media, by and large, does not cover the story very well at all. Collectively, the story's there to be found. but you're not going to hear about it on CBS or NBC or even PBS. They just don't really seem to touch it, and that's what the Sky is Pink is all about.
Great. What do you do today as far as, you're very educated on the matter. Are you still a practicing attorney or
Oh, no, I was never an attorney. I was
okay.
paralegal.
Paralegal,
like
sorry.
a scrub nurse to a surgeon, if you want to illustrate that. We assisted attorneys.
I see what you're saying.
Some would call us as a bunch of jailhouse lawyers at the end of the day. And, of course, after that, I did 20 years of legislative work, writing and research and so forth. So I was kind of well prepared for the task in government. But today I left City Council after 20 years at the end of 2011. I have a small pension. I do some consulting work, and I was an adjunct instructor at Duquesne University in their master's program. But and I'm extremely active to this day, going hither and yon, you name it. If someone calls, I come. If it's a matter of some distance, I ask them to just cover my expenses, and I'll get there. But so that's what I've been doing. I'm going to be 60 years old next month, and I'm enjoying this side of the work. I just said, well, I think I've climbed every mountain I could climb in City Council, and I was looking at, if I ran another term, I'd be 62, and I said, I got some other things to do, and I want to pursue them without being encumbered by the obligations of the office. And
sure.
I'm able to be out there.
I certainly can appreciate that. Angle. I really can. Story for another day.
The interesting thing about this is.
And thanks and welcome back. That was Doug Shields, Pittsburgh City Council, and was employed as a paralegal. Very informative. We're probably going to have him back on the show again. That was the first time I've ever met Doug, so I didn't know a whole lot about him, but boy, did he have some information for us now. So do our next two guests, and we're going to bring them on. And of course, we'll have them back another time as well because we are running out of time. Robin Mahonen, welcome to the show. And where do you stand in all of this? I know that you have toured the Green Hunter plants in Warwood and New Matamoros, I think that is, Ohio. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, Roxy. Thanks for having me on.
You betcha.
I have indeed toured both the proposed plant site in Warwood. It's not a plant yet, and we're trying to keep it that way.
Okay.
And the currently operating plant in New Matamoros, Ohio, where they are currently accepting fracking wastewater right now.
Okay. And what's going on? I mean, do you have a group, a coalition against this being built in Warwood and in Wheeling, or what do you have going on there?
Yes, we do. There's been a group here for the past several years called FACT-OV, and they've been doing a lot to educate and learn a lot more about the process. But basically, it's been a fact-finding and educational group. When we found out that this Green Hunter plant was scheduled to be opened here, we immediately swung into action. I went to the FACT-OV meeting, and I brought it to their attention that this plant was going in, and I suggested that this was a flashpoint for action. Up until now, it's mostly been our neighbors selling their property or leasing or whatever. There's really not much you can do when your next door neighbor sells a property. That's the way it is in this country. You can sell your property. But when it comes to putting a plant of this nature that's going to affect the whole community, we certainly have a lot to say about that. And we've had a lot to say about it ever since we first found out about it. We had our initial meeting the beginning of April, and 9 days later we had our first rally in Garden Park in conjunction with Earth Day. We had several hundred people attend. A lot of people came out with signs and were very concerned. We got a lot of support. We had a subsequent rally in connection with what's called the Clean River Sweep here, where the kids go down and clean up the side of the river. it seemed like a natural thing to have a rally about having clean river water that was clean of fracking waste, so we combined those together. But from the very beginning, it's been apparent to me that, as you mentioned earlier, there are so many people that just don't know what fracking is. We, of course, know all about it because it's in our neighborhoods. But my mother has a house in New York City. I go back there frequently, and I was very alarmed to find educated professional neighbors of mine who said, how's it going in West Virginia? I said, well, I'm working against fracking. And they're like, well, what is that fracking? And when I begin to describe the process of what horizontal hydraulic fracturing really is and the toxic chemicals that are involved and the radiation that comes up, they just get this look on their face and they're like, well, that's insane. And we say, yeah, that's what we think.
No doubt.
When the drills went in, there was really not much we could do about that, but this is different. And the other thing is they're talking about barging the fracking wastewater on the Ohio River. Now, the way they sell this to everybody is they tell everybody that, well, one barge will take 900 trucks off of the road and it'll make it safer and less use of gas, et cetera, et cetera. However, if one truck goes down, it goes down on land and it's a certain amount of gallons. If 900 truck worths of water goes down in the river, they're never going to be able to get that back up. In fact, just yesterday, a barge struck the side of a bridge in Star City, West Virginia, and in the last 2 years, we had no less than 4 barging accidents between Pittsburgh and Wheeling, and some of those barges are still at the bottom of the river. Now, what happens if there's millions of gallons of toxic and radioactive water at the bottom of the river? Water being what it is, it tends to blend together. There's going to be no way to get that radioactivity out of the water, and it's going to affect the drinking water of everyone that is downriver of this. That's 5 million people drink water from the Ohio River every single day, and 10% of the entire population of the United States lives in the Ohio River basin. So anything that goes on in that Ohio River affects a lot of people, and this is where we're taking our action.
I think it's great. Now, you're one of you formed, I guess, the group Wheeling Water Warriors. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm one of the founding members, also Erin Bowers, Kate Marshall, Bob Heyer. Yes, that's our group.
Great. And how do we find that group? Where is it on Facebook, or is it you have a website?
We are on Facebook, Wheeling Water Warriors, right on Facebook. It's very easy to find. And we also have a website, www.greatohioriverrelay.com, and this is to promote our next event, which is the Great Ohio River Relay.
Okay. Tell me about it. What's that going to be like?
Okay. Again, my concern is that although we have had some limited successes in some of the smaller communities, there hasn't been anything really large enough to bring attention to the issue of fracking to the nation as a whole. And as I said, if you're not living right in this area, like you live in New York City or, a place where they're not fracking, you may not know what's going on, and you need to know what's going on because it affects all of us. So I was looking for an event that would tie us all together, all the fractivists up and down the Ohio River. So the Great Ohio River Relay is designed to be a grassroots action, and we're working on love and a shoestring, as I say. We're starting on Saturday, September 14th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where the Ohio River starts. And using a baton, we're walking, biking, boating, running, and even roller skating our baton the entire 981 miles of the Ohio River until we get to Cairo, Illinois. The baton will be going through 6 states, and it's probably going to take us about 3 to 4 weeks to do it. There are 14 different co-sponsoring organizations, and we're always looking for more help.
This is fantastic. I will speak to you more about this, Robin, off the air. I want to get a lot of information from you because I want to help you and Erin with this get the word out and get that advertised a little bit more, do our share with that on the Truth Denied. So, again, Wheeling Water Warriors on Facebook, and then www.greatohioriverrelay.com. My goodness. And do you find, Robin, that in educating individuals, getting them together, educating them on, fracking and what's going on in the nearby vicinity of where you all live, etc., do you find that people immediately grasp it and are against it and kind of join forces with you?
Well, you've got to realize that we are inundated by media propaganda here. There are so many commercials from the energy companies about how wonderful this is and how many jobs and how it's going to stimulate the economy. And you got to realize in West Virginia, we're very vulnerable. This is just a replay of the Cold Wars from the last century. You have an impoverished state. I think we're something like 49th in poverty. I mean, we're really poor here.
Oh, my.
Somebody comes in and they start waving around, dollar signs and promises of, you'll never have to work again. People are only too quick to sign on the dotted line and not really think about what's going on. When people do really take the time to find out what's going on, a lot of them are stunned because it doesn't match the media story.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because I think that, and how unfortunate, and thank you for letting us know that. I think it's absolutely going on all over the United States. I think the media has done the people, the citizens, a complete injustice. They're not reporting, all facts to the stories such as this. What's the Nelson Quarry Ledges project coming up?
Okay, there is a group that's very active in Ohio right now, Don't Frack Ohio, and they are having an international gathering for people that are working against fracking. It's going to be held August 23rd, 24th, and 25th at Nelson Ledges Quarry Park, which is in Garrettville, Ohio. There's going to be music there. There's going to be educational tents. There's activities for children. Nelson Ledges Quarry Park I've been to a number of times. My husband and I are musicians, and we're old-timers there. It's an absolutely beautiful park with a natural spring-fed lake there. And unfortunately, they're starting to frack all around Nelson Ledges. So they were open to bringing this group in and letting us have it for the weekend. And it's sort of a way, again, for fractivists to connect, and also for us to kind of let down our hair a little bit, because as Doug referred to earlier, I had to laugh when he said it, this is rigorous work, particularly when you're in an area like this where you talk to people and they look at you like, oh, you're a granola-munching tree hugger, or, left-wing sort of person, and you have to kind of say, no, I just want to drink clean water. So
I can imagine, and anyone who's in activism right now, Robin, we all face the same thing. It doesn't matter. You can show up in a suit and a tie, and they're still gonna judge and call you nutty. So I do thank you for your, amount of work that you're doing and taking the lead on this, and doing something about it and being proactive, I guess I was going to say, so I just so appreciate what you're doing. And I want to get all of your information. So everyone that's been on the show tonight, Robin, if you guys could send me all of your information, your websites, everything that you've got going on at info@thetruthdenide.com, because I was not able to get all of this from Mark. So I would like to get all of this from you, and I would like to help, and I would like to have you also come back on the show again, Robin, at another time. I'm sorry that we used up so much of the time and didn't really get to have a longer conversation with you. And if has Erin Bowers arrived?
she's
Okay, so if Erin is there, if we could bring Erin on, because we've only got about 10 minutes, if that. So I want to give Erin a chance to also voice. Hello, Erin, and thanks so much for joining us. And you're a founding member as well of the Wheeling Water Warriors, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's on your mind today?
Well, Mark invited us out just to talk about fracking, so whatever questions you have.
Well, we did cover a lot, and let me ask you this, Erin. When did you find out about fracking for yourself, and then take such a strong stance against it? What year did you find out that fracking was actually really dangerous?
Roxy, last year, I work at Wheeling Park High School. I'm actually a coordinator at our high school, and they were trying to, Chesapeake company was trying to had a proposed well pad right next to our baseball field of our high school. So I was involved with a big group of people on that one last year. Actually, I sat in our faculty senate meeting last April, and our principal said there's permit in for a well pad next to our high school, and we don't know if there's anything we can do about it. So a group of people got together on that one last year, too. And it took about 6 months of hard work, persistence, like we were talking, dedication, and keeping at it. And Chesapeake pulled their application in October. And we have a Facebook page up, but there's nothing been on there since they pulled it. But it was Stop Fracking Wheeling Park High School. It was a lot of work there, too. And then there was a little break in there for a while, and in the spring of this year, then we heard about all this, and I jumped right on board with that and trying to help with the education of, getting people to know what's going on, because I think we really have to change the critical mass of people to understand, because if enough people understand, everybody will jump up and do something. But right now it's still in the education process and awareness, because a lot of people just really, like Robin said, they just don't know yet.
Oh, I would have to agree with that. When we advertised the show about a month ago, and in the last couple of weeks, the Truth Denied's even been getting a bunch of emails of people asking, what does fracking even mean? They didn't even know what it meant. So I think that you're absolutely spot on, Erin. Educating the masses is critical, and once they're educated, and like what Robin was also saying, is that when people find out that they're giving $1,200 to lease their property, and find out that they're really not part of anything big, or what a waste of money, or any of that, or health issues and water safety issues, I think that you will have people, your majorities are going to want to oppose what's been going on over the lies that are being told by the media, which is basically, we're going to improve the economy of your town, etc. So good for you. And anything coming up for you, Erin, in the near future that you're going to be, a part of? Or are you going to be going to the Nelson Quarry?
I'm not going to be able to make it to that because I have a prior commitment with my family, but I will be involved with the rally that we have in September in regards to the Great Ohio River Relay. I do want to say this one, though, Roxy, and it's not related to that specific question, but I really want people to think about our water, and what are we going to do when we don't have water, and when you're not going to be able to drink the water, you're not going to be able to grow food that's healthy, you're not going to be able to raise cattle and livestock, if you are a meat eater. And then they're going to be trying to force those GMOs down our throats. I mean, I want people to really try to wake up to that issue. There's the same companies that are probably fracking us are probably buying out companies like Nestle Water and these different things so that they can control us with water down the road. I mean, I hope people are waking up to these facts.
Well, I watched a documentary on water. It was about 2 years ago, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but I will hunt it down for the article that I'll do of this show. But it was quite interesting because water is now termed the new blue gold, and it seems to be real big commodity right now. So what you are saying is spot on, Erin, because if they start really getting into the next layer of destroying wells, groundwater, and water for agriculture, etc., water is going to become, a huge commodity like gold, more than it is right now. And there isn't going to be enough water to go around if all the water is polluted. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I think you're spot on with the issue of water, to preserve our water that we have right now.
Amen to that. And I think as we've seen wars over oil and we're going to probably see wars over water if we don't get this under control and real quick.
I completely agree with you. And for all of you, I want to thank you on behalf of, folks out here that just do not even have any idea that fracking is going on and the dangers all the way around the block of fracking. It is definitely not a sustainable. It is definitely not good for the planet. It's definitely not good for our country. And the almighty dollar just seems to rear its ugly head constantly at us. And I think one day we're just going to get sick and tired of it. You know, if we can't drink water and we can't eat food and we don't have shelter, well, what good is all of this anyway, right? What good is gasoline? So, you know what I'm saying? So, of course you do. We want to support you, Erin. We want to support you and Robin in Wheeling Water Warriors. We want to support all of your efforts. So we will definitely speak at another time and get all of the information. And if you could send it to us so that we can begin to get behind you. And, of course, we would love to have all of you come back on another show and dive deeper and catch us up on all of the missions that you're on, because it sounds like you're doing a lot of good work educating the people around you, and we'd like to be part of that and help get the word out about, especially Wheeling Water Warriors. We'd like to get the word out about that. In your opinion, Erin, do you think that even young people, like 15 years old, 16 years old, do you think that if you explain it to them, they'll get it?
Actually, we do have some very young people that are very much involved. We had a young guy who was, I believe, 14 that spoke at our city council. So, yes, they are, and actually they're very much questioning a lot of things that are going on, and they're not sitting back and just, following the status quo of what's being handed to us. They're jumping up and getting involved. When we went to a rally in Warren, Ohio a couple of weeks ago, the Wheeling Water Warriors went over to that. There was a lot of young people there. So,
I love that. I think that's fabulous. I really do. It makes me so proud, of our young. I was having a conversation with some college students a couple of days ago, and they were telling me the same thing, that there's college students are talking about the issues in our country, and they're talking about no more. We all of this, from fracking to you name it. So I find that really, really interesting. What's in your immediate future, Erin? What is up next? Is that the September rally?
There's a September rally, and there's a gathering in Pittsburgh of young people. When you spoke about young people, and I can't remember the name of the group, and I'll try to get it to Mark if I can think of what it's called. It's like We Are the Change, or We Are Power, or something like that. It's a group of young people from all over at the colleges that are going to meet in Pittsburgh to change things, especially related to fracking.
Great. Well,
Power or something like that, or I can't remember the name of it. I'll try to find it for you.
Please do, Erin. Any, the door's always open here at the Truth Tonight, so we'll get our information to you as well. And everyone that's listening, please get involved. I mean, get behind Wheeling Water Warriors. Get behind all of these guests on the show who are trying to do something about it. Because, Erin, if we don't do something about it, all of us in this country eventually are going to be living right next to or within 1,000 feet of one of these fracking industrial plants, right?
Yes, and let me tell you, we just found it online. It's called wearepowershift.org. Wearepowershift.org. Look at it's a really nice one.
Okay, wearepowershift.org. Okay, I'll contact them as well.
Pittsburgh, yeah.
Okay, and listen, Erin, how do you know if you live near a fracking plant? How do we know?
You can hear the trucks going by. You can see the trucks going by. You can see the roads are torn up. Smell stuff. You can see a lot of trucks.
Can you tell me what kind of trucks?
Big trucks, loud trucks.
Have like Chesapeake Energy on the side of them, or
Halliburton, Chesapeake.
Okay. And then what about explosions? Do you ever hear explosions?
Personally, I've not as of yet, and I hope I don't have to.
Because out here in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, we've been hearing explosions, and they feel like they're coming from under the ground. So I was just wondering if that could have anything to do with fracking facilities.
Lady whose neighbor just leased property, she's looking out her window, and she sees these guys driving through her field with a pickup truck, and then they're driving stakes into the ground. She goes running out. She's like, "What are you doing?" They've put explosive charges in her ground.
That's what I'm asking about right there. I'm asking about that. Oh, my God.
I'm calling the police, the DEP, like 4 or 5 different agencies. Like, what do I do? There's explosives in my ground. They put them in there by accident.
And they all deny it. They all deny it.
Oh, my.
Okay, Robin, I want to talk to you more about that, too, because I think there's a connection to these explosions that we're having all over Arizona and fracking. I really do. I think there's a connection. So, listen, we've got, like, under a couple of minutes here to wrap things up. And thank you, Robin, for saying that. Listen, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Mark Eddy for putting this show together and contacting you, and, of course, Doug Shields and Robin Mahonen and Erin Bowers. I'm going to have all the information for all of you. Of course, you're all invited to come back to the show again and give us, some more information that we all need. We want to be in touch with you so that we know when to advertise your rallies and your activism, anything that's coming up, and any petitions that you need signed, etc. I just can't thank you enough. This is a very serious matter, and I think it's just fracking is on the way to destroying our country, absolutely destroying our country. And you've all been correct. You will not see this on mainstream. It is not being talked about. It is not being, nothing. And I think that Doug Shields made a really good point that we need to have a face to the issue, and we have to go to Obama. We have to go to the president. We need to start holding the president responsible for everything that is going on with fracking, because it's getting past him. It's not cool, and we will get it stopped. But you guys all of the guests this evening has given us so much inspiration that we can change the outcome of this. So I want to thank all of you. And Mark Eddy, if you want to pop on real quick, we have about 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I just want to thank you again.
Thank you, Roxy, for allowing us to be on your forum. Mainly Doug did a fantastic job of informing everyone about what's really going on.
Yes.
April 15th of this year, I live in Wheeling, West Virginia, and there are 5 well pads surrounding my house. So that's another. Aside from the frack water pipe, only 200 yards from my house, I'm also surrounded by 5 fracking wells.
Okay, and from what I understand, for instance, I'm looking at a fracking site right now, and it says 72 trillion gallons of water are being used, and 360 billion gallons of chemicals are needed to run their gas wells. So it sounds like a tremendous amount of waste of water. It sounds like a lot of chemical exposure as well that is needed. And we are speaking about natural gas, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, the extraction of natural gas. So this is the math here. I'm looking at 500,000 active gas wells in the USA, times 8 million gallons of water per fracking, times 18 times a well can be fracked, equals 72 trillion gallons of water and 360 billion gallons of chemicals needed to run current gas wells in the United States of America. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, it takes about 2 million gallons of water to do a frack.
Can we get that phone to go off? Thank you. Can we get that phone to go off, please?
It's off.
Okay, thank you.
So there's each well can be fracked.
Okay, can we get that person that's on the phone to go in another room, please?
He's going to be off in a second. So,
Mark?
Yeah.
I need that person to go in another room, please.
It's on the answering machine. I'm sorry. So there's 2 million gallons of water that needs to be used to do one frack. Each well can be fracked 3 times, and there's up to, 6 wells, or 10 wells per pad.
So very in the know about fracking. We're also going to have Doug Fields, another expert, Robin Mahonen, and Erin Bowers. We're going to start the show right now and introduce Mark Eddy to all of you. Mark, please join us on the air. And Mark, why don't you just start out with what is fracking and what made you become an activist against fracking?
Okay, fracking is a way to extract gas from 6,000 feet below the surface, and chemicals and water used to crack the shale, and the gas will flow back out. And that's basically what fracking is in a nutshell. I became more concerned about what was going on April 15th when a frack water pipe that connects a frack pond to a fracking pad ruptured, and I saw all the water rushing down my street and into the stream that runs through my property. Fortunately, there were not the chemicals added to the water yet, and my property is okay. But that's a major reason why I am opposed to fracking. It's so prevalent within a couple miles of my neighborhood that when I moved here 9 years ago, it has changed from a rural setting to an industrialized setting, and I'm concerned that this isn't what I moved here for.
Correct. Now, where are you? What state are you in where this is occurring? And by the way, did this pipe burst in April 15th of 2013? So is this recent?
Yes. That's just a tremendous amount of water for just one well.
Well, and again, the contamination, it says during the process, methane gas and toxic chemicals leach out from the system and contaminate nearby groundwater. Then methane concentrations are 17 times higher in drinking water wells near fracturing sites than in normal wells. So this sounds pretty bad. I mean, it sounds pretty massive, the contamination that's going on. And then when it comes to the drinking water, the contaminated well water is used for drinking water for nearby cities and towns. There have been over 1,000 documented cases of water contamination next to the areas of gas drilling, as well as cases of sensory, respiratory, and neurological damage due to ingested contaminated water. So this is just bad news all the way around the block, right, Mark?
Yes, and there's also the flaring.
What does that mean?
That's where they burn off some of the excess gases, and a lot of the heavier gases are in that the ground ozone. It's like a mist or fog that would hover around. Yeah. So I've smelled that from the 5 well pads near my house.
So hold on a second. So you're actually smelling something, and gas doesn't have a smell. So what are you smelling?
Oh, it's the flare. It happens during the flares.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's like so it'd be like methane. It's
Halloween.
Okay. Mark, could I ask that the people that are in the room, I really appreciate all of you being here for this show, but I must ask that anyone that's in the room, if they need to speak to one another, they need to go into another room or stand outside or do something like that, because I know the importance of this subject matter, and I know how all of you, I know your background, and I know what you are doing in the world to change this. And I'd like this to be a show where, our audience can really hear what each one of you have to say individually. So I'm going to have to ask again that anybody talking, answering phones, and all the rest of it, please, if you go into another room and have your discussion, it'll really make for a more precise show that the audience can really hear. Now, what about this stuff that they call that's left behind? Only 30 to 50% of the fracturing fluid is recovered, and the rest of the toxic fluid is left in the ground and is not biodegradable. So is that the stuff that's escaping up into the air, Mark, or is this a whole different toxic situation as well that's being left in the ground?
Well, the flaring is just going up into the atmosphere as well as along ground level. The flow back is probably what you're talking about. That's
okay.
That's the solution that was injected into the ground to do the fracking. That it has to come back out to allow the gas and oil to come out behind it, and that solution that was put into the ground to do the fracturing is what the Green Hunter plant is going to be doing in the Warwood section of Wheeling, is treating it so that it could be reused at other well pads, and the parts that so it cuts down on using fresh water, but they also have to get rid of the solids in the flow back, and that's what part of Green Hunter's plan is to possibly barge it on the Ohio River to injection well sites.
Okay. So and that sounds a little scary because you're talking about a river, and I'm sorry, I need to correct myself. What you were first talking about is the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. That's what in the open air pits that evaporates the VOCs into the atmosphere, creating contaminated air, acid rain, and ground level ozone. So may I ask, I want to wish you all a very happy Friday. It is August 16th. The year is 2013. It's going by pretty fast, wouldn't you say? Listen, we're going to get right to the show today. I'm not going to have any Truth Tonight announcements today, simply because we do have a host of individuals that will be, it's a panel, and we're going to be discussing the dangers of fracking and the conspiracy behind it. And a lot of you have been asking me throughout the week, what is fracking? So this is the show to learn about fracking, what it is, and you're going to get the big picture on this. In the United States especially. Now, if you want to look at some of the links that have been provided, you can go ahead and go to thetruthDenied.com. Right on the front page, you'll see some links. You can take a look at it. We will also periodically be dropping some of those links into the chat room. Hello, chat room. It's always a pleasure to see all of you in there. If you have any questions during the show, please, by all means, type them in. Our producer, Thomas, will pick up those questions and we'll throw them at the panel to see if it's anything that we haven't covered. Give the panel about the first hour, would you, chat room, just to cover a lot of the bases, because you may have some questions that they're going to cover anyway. And let's just make that first hour go by, and then if you've got questions, go ahead and field them into the chat room. Those of you who are listening on iPods and iPhones, if you are not in the chat room, just go to freedomslips.com, and right there above you'll see chat. Just click it and join the chat room if you like, or you can call in the show during the second hour, and I will reveal the phone number at that point. We should get started. We've got a lot of introducing to do, and we're going to educate you right away about fracking, what it is, what it means to this country, and these are the experts, and these are the individuals who are trying to do something about this. They will explain to you what has happened during the course of planning this show, because we did have a couple of gentlemen who were supposed to appear on the show, both from Green Hunter Water Solutions, and the reps backed out at the last minute. Gee, I wonder why, and we'll find out why. First, I would like to let you know all of the names of the panel. We're going to have a gentleman by the name of Eddy, who is an activist and who is also